because you know I'm all about that bass. About that bass. No treble. Howdy folks, I'm Autumn Witch, and in this video I'm going to be giving this here Stormspeeder for my White Scars a scenic base in keeping with the rest of the Khan's boys in my army. Before I start though, can I ask you to like and subscribe, and also check out our new Facebook group where we share works in progress and hobby gossip. Link is in the description below. So first, I'm going to build up some different levels. For this, I'm using these cork sheets I got from Amazon pretty cheap. They're easier to tear up and make decent layers of rock for bases. Cork is fantastic for bases actually, as it is super lightweight to the point where it even floats, which is why the south of Ireland doesn't need to worry about rising sea levels. These ones actually have an adhesive coat on the underside, so I can build up layers and they'll stay in place without having to wait for PVA or super glue to dry. You can see I'm building up around the flying stand. These are a little controversial in the hobby, and not just because it looks like a speculum. They are certainly much sleeker than the older ones, but they are far less stable without actually gluing the stand to the model. A lot of folks eschew these altogether and go with an opaque dowel, but I'm going to persist with this one because I've paid for it, damn it, I'm going to use it. Once I have the cork stacked the way I want it, I give it a light saturating with thin super glue. This is absorbed into the cork and creates a really strong bond between the pieces. On infantry bases, you can get away with just a layer of glue and basing mix. But on larger bases, I think it looks better if you have some uneven ground. I glove up and grab an old box of milliput. It looks a little crusty, but it mixes together well enough with a little water on the fingertips. I make some gradients between layers of rocks and some undulations on the plain part of the base. I don't go for a massive contrast, just something that will give a nice amount of subtle variation for the finished overall piece. Now for that 40k staple, skulls! I clip a few out from the Citadel Skulls kit and press them into the milliput. This kit has served me well, but I'm running low. I may have to pop into town and grab another box pretty soon. Luckily the town is Nottingham and I can just go straight to Warhammer World or Element Games or any of the other wonderful hobby places in Nottingham. Nottingham's great. I have this old plastic broken necron I found kicking about at the bottom of an old job lot. I think he'd look cool draped over some rocks, so I play about with some positions until I find one I like. I then do some clipper-based surgery on him so that he fits and gets a bit of battle damage. He doesn't have the neon green tube in his weapon that he came with, but I have an idea for that later on. Stay tuned. Now I grab my Vallejo texture paste and slather it on the ground and the tops of the rocks. Colour doesn't really matter because it's going to get painted over. I use an old brush dipped in water to thin it out over the surfaces of the rocks and around the skulls and dead necron. I also stipple around the flatter areas to give some texture, and then leave it overnight for the texture paste to dry and for the milliput to fully set. As a neurodiverse person, I know all about masking. So now that everything's good to go, I mask off the stand itself with masking tape and some old black tack to protect it from the spray primer. And I get Az to go prime it outside, as outside is big and cold and full of stuff. I am in no mood for stuff right now, you hear? matte black high coat with a zenithal matte white high coat, my usual combination. Firstly, I paint the Necron with Storm Host Silver and Black Legion on his gun. Then I go over the skulls with Skeleton Horde contrast paint. The Bear Rock gets a black wash with the dirt texture getting patches of Snakebite Leather, Militarum Green and Skeleton Horde. When the Necron is dry, I give him a coat of Guilliman Flesh for an aged brass tinted look thing. Now I grab my trusty favourite panel liners and dab the brown and black in various spots to stain the ground and enhance shadows. I also use the brown on the skulls and the Necron, wiping away any excess with my smudgy finger. The smudgy finger is an oft-overlooked hobby tool, and I think my finger deserves some love. Now for the dry brushing. A bone white goes over the skulls, whilst the rest gets patches of Death Guard green and leather brown. The rocks get a dry brush of Thunderhawk blue. Finally, the Necron gets a dry brush of Sycorax bronze. I'm using Geek Gaming Scrubland's basing mix, as is the norm for my White Scars. First, I put patches of Geek Gaming fast drying basing glue on the flat parts and spread them around with my old brush, taking care not to hit the skulls, the Necron or the rock faces. I pop the base into an old ice cream tub to contain the splash zone, and then I sprinkle the basing material all over it. I then shake it off and pick out some larger pieces from the mix, rocks, weeds, etc., and sprinkle them into clusters where they would naturally settle on the base. Like a kiss from a rose, I seal them all down with a few drops of thin superglue. You have to be careful not to over squirt, but a little goes a long way as it soaks into the basing mix and holds everything in place whilst the basing glue sets. When the superglue sets, it can be glossy, so if you want to matte it down, that'll get rid of the shine. Here though, it reads as damp patches on like a foresty ground, so I'll keep it as it is. Now for some grass tufts. I glue them on in little clusters, making sure not to obscure the other details. I then water down some Nihilakh oxide, although this can be done with any light turquoise or turquoise paint. And I go over the Necron, leaving a nice verdigris effect in the recesses where the water would naturally pool and oxidization occur. As an out and proud queer person, the law states that I must have a copious amount of glitter to hand at all times. So I grab a pinch of green and a pinch of silver, sprinkling it where the glass tube of his gun would have shattered. And now I'm going to be finding glitter everywhere and over everything. Whatever I make next, it's gonna sparkle whether I want it to or not. And with a simple rimming job, sorry not sorry, here we have the finished base. I'm quite pleased with it. It tells its own little story without detracting from the model it supports. I'll leave you with some beauty shots of the whole thing, but first I'd like to ask you again to like and subscribe and come find us on Facebook, links in the description. I'm Autumn Witch, and I'll catch you next time on Bleeding Tree Gaming.